We've got a few more signings to dive into.
This offense continues to evolve as the season goes on.
Welcome into Buccaneers Insider, presented by Hard Rock Bet Sportsbook. Casey Phillips here with senior writer and editor Scott Smith, and we have a very special guest here with us today, Director of Player Personnel Shane Scannell. Shane, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we had Tony Hardy on recently and went through a lot of the draft picks, and we thought, man, we haven't really gotten a chance to have someone from the scouting staff on to break down all of our free agents as well. We thought that would be a great thing to hear from you from, and just if you can explain to people a bit about your role, where you kind of fall within the scouting department, and how you work together with a team from a little bit more of the pro side.
Yeah, so just finished up my first year as Director of Player Personnel, and my background prior to that, I was the Director of Pro Scouting, Assistant Director of Pro Scouting, and a Pro Scout prior to that time. So most of my background had been on the Pro Scouting side in title, but then have kind of always done a little bit of college and adding more to that over the last year.
That's awesome.
When you guys were preparing for free agency, did you have meetings ahead of time to kind of pinpoint the types of players that you were looking for?
Absolutely, and that's something that kind of goes throughout the year. Mm-hmm. As the season progresses, we kind of get a little bit more clarity of what our needs are going to be, and then in turn, what traits we're going to be looking for at those spots.
So can you give us an idea of some of the things that were said, like we want players who are this?
Yeah, I think that, as you guys have heard from other people in the building, a definite emphasis on getting tougher, edgier, bringing in a little bit more of the kind of nasty football character that we maybe were missing a little bit last season. And that's kind of what we tried to target.
Well, let's go through a few of these guys and just tell us what you liked about them. And I guess if you could also talk a little bit about the difference in trying to scout someone that's already played in the pros versus a college player, how that kind of factors in with some of these guys. But Alex Anzalone feels like we'd played him 1,000 times because we just can't stop playing the Lions over here. That's like every dang year. Feels like we keep going to Detroit.
And the Saints before that.
Yeah, so clearly someone y'all were familiar with playing against. So what stood out about him and made you think this was a guy who would be a good asset?
Just no matter where he's been, whether it was Detroit or New Orleans, he was just always a good, solid player. You knew what you were getting every week, steady, dependable, good athlete, tough, does his job week in, week out, and he always knew what you were going to get from him. He was kind of a thorn in our side to play against, just wanted to add him to our mix instead.
And then you got another guy from Detroit as well. I mean, it's not bad to be poaching from the Lions because they've had a lot of success lately, but Al-Qadim Muhammad, he kind of brings that edge too, right?
For sure.
As an edge.
For sure. Definitely brings an edgy presence, plays extremely hard, and then his production this year has really stood out. You know, he had 11 sacks, playing only like 40% of the snaps, and we're really excited to get him.
And then Kenneth Gainwell, this is, I loved hearing that he basically caught this incredible ball on Alex Anzalone when they were playing against each other. I heard them kind of joking about that whenever they came in the building. And but Gainwell to me is such an interesting addition to this running back room. He feels like such a potential like versatile guy of the way that you could use him. Does that seem fair?
Absolutely. And I think one of the cool things about him is just that he can play on all three downs and special teams at a pretty high level. And ultimately, we saw a lot of similarities to Bucky. And, you know, I think a lot of times you target maybe two contrasting styles at running back. You kind of have maybe the big guy and then the smaller, fast guy, whatever the case may be. But in a different sense, it's kind of cool to have two backs who can do all of the same things. Maybe not the exact same, but the similar style. So whether it's Bucky in the game or Kenny Gainwell in the game, it's not really limiting what the offense can do.
Kind of helps you out too with continuity if one of those guys or the other is unavailable for a game or two, which you don't want obviously, but it can happen.
Exactly.
I know Miles Killebrew also is an interesting one of, you know, definitely known as the special teams ace. So tell us a bit in terms of the defensive side of him, but then also, you know, especially that special team side and his ties to Danny Smith and what you guys had been able to gather about who he was. Yeah,
special teams is his calling card, and Danny could not stop raving about him. And we've seen it over the years. I mean, I was looking, he's got something like 80 career special teams tackles. He's been a special teams captain everywhere he's been. Great leader, but also a great player on special teams. We're really excited to have.
Punts too.
Yep, block punts.
I feel like you guys listened to Danny Smith and thought, let's bring in Miles Killebrew because Danny Smith is trying to create a certain culture for special teams here, and this guy is going to be a leader who's going to help us do that. Would that be accurate?
For sure. Definitely someone who will set the tone and already kind of have the background with Danny to kind of carry the culture and help echo the message.
You also moved pretty quickly to get a new primary backup for Baker Mayfield and Jake Browning from the Bengals. And what is it that the Buccaneers really liked about him as a guy? Because you're as the second quarterback potentially, you're always one snap away from being in the game. So how do the Bucs? Why are they confident in Jake Browning as the guy that can step in?
Yeah, number one, the experience. He's played a lot of football, and that goes a long way at the quarterback position. And experience being a backup, experience starting games in Burrow's absence over the past couple of years, and just a guy who we felt comfortable with coming in and filling in if we need him to.
Do you think he has a stylistically, how would you describe what kind of quarterback he is?
More of a pocket passer.
Okay.
But smart, knows where to go with the ball, and get the offense in the right spot, and we like that about him.
I feel like a year ago, or a little more than a year ago, we weren't real happy when we weren't able to re-sign Justin School. And it seems like a concerted effort to let's go back and bring this guy back. And so is that accurate? I mean, were we a little upset that he got away and now we're happy to have him back?
Can never have enough tackles. So,
yeah.
Every preseason seemingly we're in August and, oh shoot, we could upgrade our tackle depth. And you just can't find them.
Right.
So we're really excited about Ben Chikwuma and the steps that he took last year. But having Schooley back is just going to give us another body that, if necessary, having 4 is a good place to be.
We all hear about draft boards during the draft in the draft room and can visualize, the ranking of players. You probably have a board of your own, right? Where you have every single position, and if the Buccaneers have a need at cornerback, here's our list, and here's who we're going to look at first. So how do you develop that through the years?
So there's both a UFA board, talking about the guys we just talked about, but then during the season there's also an emergency list, we call it, which does come out as a board. And there will be guys who are veterans, guys who are practice squad, and that gets started all the way in the preseason. That first cut is kind of the building block for the rest of the season. Once they're released, we'll talk about, do you want to claim this guy? Do you want to add this guy to the practice squad? But then simply, do you want to add him to the emergency list? And then that lives on throughout the entire season. And that's where if we have an injury on Sunday, we'll come in on Monday and say, was it corner? Pick 4 guys off the emergency list at corner to work out, and then potentially add one of those guys.
So the point is that you, in the position you're in, and some of the people you work with, have to be ready. Like, you see a corner get hurt on Sunday, and Monday morning you're going to be able to tell Jason Light, this is who we should go for.
Exactly.
And then I'd love to hear a bit about how you guys work together, and now that you've moved into this sort of joint pro-college role, I think we all kind of hear of it as 2 separate things. There's the pro scouts and the college scouts. Eventually, though, obviously, when you look at things like you're trying to get free agency to match up with the draft, to know between those 2 things you've met your needs, how does that ultimately all kind of come to work together? Does it almost sometimes feel like each side is fighting a bit of, oh, we should wait to draft this, oh, we should sign this free agent guy? How does that all kind of come together?
So I think on the pro side, when we start the offseason, I think you're trying to attack as many needs as you can in free agency, to kind of have those spots filled, maybe not with an elite player, but you at least have an option at each of the spots where you definitely have a quote-unquote glaring need. So then you're kind of freeing yourself up in the draft to where you can really target best player available.
That makes sense. And I think I've heard it said before that a roster is never done. It's always in construction, right? It feels like once you've gone through free agency and the draft, okay, here's our roster, done. But the job's never done, right?
Right.
And is it possible that within – I don't think the history of this team in recent years has shown a lot of big-level signings between the draft and the start of training camp, but there still are possible additions. Is that accurate?
For sure, and that goes throughout the entire season. I mean, something as simple as when we had rookie minicamp before the draft, the local pro day before the draft, we had a couple of veteran tryouts, and we ended up signing Chase Lucas and Kamon Hall, who have both played a lot of football, and we'll see where that goes. But there's just so many steps along the way where you can, or so many avenues along the way where you can acquire players. So, there's still a bunch of free agents on the street right now, and then it's the preseason where there's the 90-man roster cut down to 53, where there's tons and tons and tons of players available, and then get into the season even, and that's where you can poach players. There's a waiver every day, and so it's always an evolving process, and we're always looking to make incremental gains on the roster.
You talked a little bit about your background and how you have done some on the college side as well. And when you're a pro scout, do your scouting reports to these players begin with the original work that was done for the draft? Like, this is a guy we really liked in that draft. We didn't get him, but we're keeping an eye on him.
That's why the work that the college scouts do on every player and not just the players that we get is so important, because the second all those guys get drafted, it kind of becomes the pro department's responsibility to know them. So every player that we ever talk about, we're opening up their college profile and reading their character report all the background information, and so that stuff lives on forever.
That's cool.
Awesome. Well, Shane, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it, and excellent work this offseason. We're all very excited about these new guys. Can't wait to watch them play, so thank you.
Well, thank you for having me. Enjoyed it.
Well, we really enjoyed having Shane on, and we appreciate his time for sure. It was great to hear about some of our free agents, although in the break you and I just remembered we forgot to ask him about A'Shawn Robinson, which now I'm upset about. We just
the list was inadequate.
The list wasn't there.
Yeah,
but
you know, we had Tony Hardy on a couple weeks ago, as you mentioned, and I just like seeing what these guys represent, in that Tony is just 2 years ago was promoted to his current position as director of college scouting, and then Shane, as he noted, was just promoted this past year to director of player personnel. But these are guys that have been with the team for a long time. And I know how much Jason Light values his staff, and he makes a point of giving them credit all the time. And you see guys like John Spytek graduate to others, you know, he's a GM now, and we don't bring somebody else in. We have somebody waiting who has put in the work and has demonstrated to Jason Light and everybody else that they are capable of an even bigger role and more responsibilities. And I just think it's a great way of doing business. So many of our guys and women have been with this team for so long, and they just advance up the ranks, deservedly so, and that's true for Shane
and they
as
know
well.
what we're looking for. You don't have to
continuity,
teach, you know, like this is what it means to be a Buccaneer, this is what we're looking for, this is our needs. Like everybody just already understands that and is on the same page, so I'm sure the learning curve then is so much smaller than trying to bring somebody else new in. Well, we got a chance to hear from some of the coaches. So last week, the offensive coaches got a chance to speak. And really outside of the show that I do during the season, there aren't that many times that position coaches speak. I always think this is a really cool time of the year to get to hear from all of these guys at once, because they are the ones that are with these players more often than anybody else. Like in those meeting rooms, in that stuff, like it's very cool to hear their expectations, their thoughts. So we had the defensive coaches plus Danny Smith this week. You got to throw special teams in there somewhere. So I know Danny Smith in particular was one that you wanted to talk about.
You said how we don't get to hear from him very often. At the end of his time at the podium, Danny Smith said, "Okay, I'll see you guys next year at this time." So I don't think he's really dying to do
Little does he know he will see you on
He
my
wanted.
show.
He really.
Little does he know.
Dan, it was very entertaining. We've already seen him on the practice field, and his drills are like nonstop. Like he never stops. It's just immediately from one rep to another, and he's talking the whole time loudly. I don't mean like he's one of these guys that yells at everybody all the time for messing up. It's both encouraging and fixing mistakes.
Instructing,
but it's nonstop, loud, and in control, and fast-paced, and it's just like, wow, this is pretty impressive. So he came to the podium, and he kind of just wanted to sit on the edge of the stage and just have a chat with everybody.
So fireside
we
chat
made
with
him stand at the podium because we wanted the audio,
Yeah.
but it was still just very much just a very casual, let's just have a chat. And it was very entertaining. But one thing that stood out to me was if you remember last year, the Buccaneers, they changed the kickoff return rule, right? And they made the touchback the 35 in hopes that teams would stop kicking touchbacks, because when they made the original change to the dynamic kickoff and put the touchback at the 30, it only raised the amount of percentage of kickoffs that were being returned from like 23% to like 35%, and they really wanted more like 75%, and they made that change last year, and it worked. I mean, for what they wanted to, the NFL wanted to accomplish, it was around 75%, and the Buccaneers were right there for the first 13 games last year. We were kicking the ball down into the landing zone so it would be returned, because you want to stop them before the 35. And we unfortunately had some coverage problems, and in the last 4 games we just decided to keep kicking it off into the end zone. And I don't think, given from hearing Danny talk about this, that he's really very much in favor of kicking touchbacks.
Yeah.
He wants to cover, and so he talked about that quite a bit.
It is situational, okay, but I can tell you this, okay, in 1 year don't make a study. This is pretty new to all of us, okay? The 35-yard line was the best starting point in the National Football League a year ago. So if you're kicking it out of the end zone and just giving it to the 35, you're giving them the best field position in the league, okay? Now, is there a time for that? Yes, few and far between, Okay, few and far between. They got a dangerous returner back there. There's 2 minutes left in the game. We're up by 14 points. Let's bang inside, turn it over to our defense. Let's go home with a win. You got to know how to win that game. I'm not worried about our stats. I'm not worried about our net. I'm not worried about all that crap at that time. Okay, how do we win this game? And I think as a coach, you've got to portray that to your players so they understand. You know, how are we getting this win? And then we'll worry about the rest of the stuff, you know, come in here Monday and clean up, because there's always stuff to clean up. But how do you win this game? So there's certain circumstances where you would, but again, to me, they're few and far between because I like to kick and cover, and I think we'll be capable of doing that.
You got to love the energy.
Yeah, I think that, and look, if you're going to have that kind of energy, I feel like special teams is such a great position for him to be coaching. That like, that's a group that you have to have energized and ready to go at a moment's notice, and that some of them, this is the thing that is why they're on the roster. And to inspire that and bring that energy to an unsung group of people, I feel like is great.
Do you know that this will be his 30th season as a special teams coordinator in the NFL?
Incredible.
Yeah.
He probably knows a thing or two at this point. I think he's probably learned a thing or two. Well, I wanted to highlight Marcus West, our new defensive line coach. He's been great to get to know, another high energy person. And I love his vibes. I love everything that he brings. And I really am excited to see what he does with this group of guys, which also this group is one I am just so excited to watch. I did a event the other night with Jason Light and Yaya Diaby. And Yaya was talking about how he's like, man, I get to stand next to, like, we have Vita and Kalijah and Ashawn. He's like, I'm finally not going to get chipped all the time. Like, there's going to be a whole bunch of other people they have to pay attention to. And I wanted to hear what Marcus thought about this group of people as well, of just the talent level and especially, like, who he thought Vita Vea was, but then the group overall and what he thought that could mean that they were able to do. So take a look.
I mean, the dude is one of the best in the league. It's real. George Edwards said it, he's a generational player. So the ways we can help him is to be able to single up some blocks. And what has to happen is somebody else has to make some other plays on the win. Somebody else wins. And we're capable. You talked about the depth. We're capable of winning at other places. That just makes it better for Vita Vea. And he'll get it. Schematically, Coach Bowles is incredible, so smart, and has done incredible things defensively in this league. So we'll do some things to hopefully give him one-on-one so he'll be able to expose people.
You heard him here talking about Vita, which obviously multiple-time Pro Bowler, which he mentioned. But another thing he said during his time at the podium was he started going through what an interesting mix it is. And I think it's the position that has added the most. You know, maybe Reuben Bain to the outside linebacker and Josiah Trotter to inside linebacker were the biggest needs of the Buckheads, but the position that has added the most and is now suddenly really, really deep is that interior defensive line. And as Marcus was pointing out, it's a really interesting mix of players because you have veterans who have played a lot, like Vita Vea. You have young guys who have played a lot, like Kalijah Cansey. You have young guys who haven't played a whole lot yet, like Elijah Roberts, who got a good amount of playing time, but he's just 1 year into his career. And then you've got brand new guys like DeMonte Capehart and some other guys that are fans that may seem like they're on the fringes, but have a really good shot at making an impact, like a Jason Jones or an Elijah Simmons. So it's a very deep group that they're going to have to make some tough decisions on when it comes to the 53-man roster, but it's also virtually every kind of player that you could have in your group.
And I think, again, as we talk about energy with Danny Smith, with Marcus West, we also brought back Nacho. And let's be honest.
That's energy.
That is some energy right there for that D-line group. So I think they're going to be a really fun group to watch at practice and in games and to see the havoc that they can wreak from the inside. And then, again, what that's going to do for guys like Reuben and Yaya on the outside, I think is going to be really exciting. Well, that's going to do it for us on this edition of Buccaneers Insider. Thanks so much for being with us, and we'll see you next time.